the first glimpses were protests and Walter Rodney. And my first response to self was, why are they highlighting all of this? And very quickly, I got control of myself and I realized that it represents a painful period of this country. I was about age 8 at the time and have some memories of the riots, Rodney, the prevailing political climate at the time, the Chinese riot, the impact that had on downtown Kingston. And it was for me certainly a painful part of our history that I had not resolved as an individual. It was raining out, it is raining outside, so I decided, let me just go further through. And as I went through, I started to make connections with some of the persons who I didn't even realize were part of the student activism at the time. Persons like Mark Figueroa, Rupert Lewis, who must have been a faculty member, Horace Levy, Jerry Small. And then as I navigated the exhibition, I slowly started to recognize the significance of it, because apart from telling a story and documenting an important part of the university's history, and also, probably more importantly, the national history and also the regional history, I think an exhibition like this allows us to resolve a number of psychological issues, because it's about pain, but it's also about triumph and victory. But the painful part, sometimes we don't get an opportunity to deal with, and the exhibition allows you to tell the story, but also allow individuals who identify with it to be able to also add to this story, because that storytelling is an important part of resolving your own traumatic issues, because traumatic memories become fragmented and they become buried. But as you navigate the process and you begin to identify with it psychologically and to add to the story, it helps you hopefully to resolve some of these issues, one, but it allows you, the exhibition allows an opportunity for others to bear witness, to become part of the whole witness bearing exercise, which is so important in the resolution of trauma and traumatic history. So that's another level, because in order for us to resolve a lot of our pain, whether it's individual pain, collective pain, social pain, we have to go through these processes, telling story, bearing witness. And these indeed are important steps in the whole process of restorative justice, right? And which I think for me as a psychiatrist, as a mental health professional, an exhibition is about. It's not just about just telling the story, but it's about adding that psychological, that emotional dimension to the storytelling and the resolution of pain, conflict, and also towards the celebration of our achievements, of our activities, and of ourselves.
Tell me about any experience that you had of student protests, because you were a child when the Rodney one. But what about later on when you were a student at the university?
Yeah, so it was 1980. I remember there was a student protest. It's about a few weeks to exams. I'm going to study, join my study group, and then I realized that students were gathered by the undercraft. And they were chanting, "We support St. Augustine, Brathwaite is disgusting." And I suppose as a student, very vulnerable, I joined it and became a part of it. Just never studied for the day, but was part of the whole thing, facing the police barricade. And I realized how easy it is for you to become identified with a part of, with protest and so on. And in reflection, it was what, almost 10 years after the 68 riot, almost 10 years. But that's my connection with protests on the campus, in terms of how easy it is to be part of a protest as a student, and how easy it is sometimes, even without actually actively preparing for it, that you can actually become a part of history.
One of the things that many of the people we've interviewed say is that they were brand new to the campus,
Yes.
and they went because it was exciting.
Exciting, yes, and this is an exciting part of what university is about. You know, as students, you're supposed to become to actively involve. You grow up in an era where you've grown to accept that university students, in fact, can change the face of history. That your first time you're away from home, and you begin to accept your new role as an adult, and the need you can, the opportunities that you now have, charged with all the enthusiasm to change society. Looking back now, you realize that change doesn't take place that easily, but that in fact sometimes these landmark protests and activities can impact on the social landscape for a long time, as the 68 riot did in fact, or protest I would prefer to call it, would have impacted not only on the landscape of the university, but certainly the Jamaican landscape, the wider Caribbean landscape. It was also part of a wider global movement in terms of student activism, the civil rights movements in the state, the Black Power movements across the globe, and so on.